You know, you have to have good water to make good coffee. California lawmakers are concerned about children in the state drinking lead-contaminated water in their schools. Lead exposure is particularly detrimental for children who are still developing, yet the water fountains and the faucets in the state schools have not been tested for those damaging contaminants. Assemblymember Chris Holden is trying to fix that with a bill that would require water fountains and faucets at schools and private schools built before 2010 be tested every 5 years and cleaned up if tainted with lead. Hello. Joining us live, a man who knows everything there is to know about lead in our water, national water expert and founder of OriginClear, Riggs Eckelberry. Riggs, welcome. I'm so glad you could join us.
Thank you, Shemane. It's such a pleasure.
Now, you got your espresso, right?
And it's from a triple
There we go.
filter.
Cheers.
Now, I want to see the
I
foam
love
on your
that.
lip.
Oh, I did. Yeah. I'm afraid that I won't be able to get it off. This is a cappuccino, and it was a heart-shaped cappuccino. Riggs, according to recent NRDC polling data, access to safe drinking water is a top priority for America. You didn't have to poll anybody for that. How do we find out more about the quality of our water and what we do to ensure the water that we're drinking is actually safe? Residents in Rio Verde, Arizona, recently had their water permanently shut off due to drought, and Jackson, Mississippi residents are preparing to go without water periodically for the next 10 years. Beyond lead pipes, what other water issues is our nation facing, and are we in a water crisis?
Well, arguably, Shemane, we've been in a water crisis for a while. It's finally coming to light with the scandals at Flint, Compton, California, Jackson, Mississippi. But, you know, even affluent areas like Fort Lauderdale and Miami-Dade County have had their problems. So what's going on? First of all, I wanted to answer your first question, which is how do I find out about the water in my area? And I find that the best source is the Environmental Working Group, ewg.org/tap water. And you put in your zip code and, you get the nightmare. It's pretty bad, right? Now, virtually every single district in America is complying with the law. The municipalities are doing their job. However, the standards are way out of date. And EWG will point out, by the way, this is 15,000 times below the standard of what science has learned. So we've got a big lag between science and the law. And part of the problem is that we've been neglecting our nation's water infrastructure. Our costs of operation and maintenance, which is basically like letting your Toyota Corolla just get worse and worse, have been rising ever since 1961, which is longer than you or I have been alive. So it's really a long and sad story. Now, we can get to what we do about it, but that's the situation.
Not much longer. I was born in 62, but I was at a very nice hotel in Fort Lauderdale about a year ago, and I went to fill up the bathtub. The water was yellow. What does that mean about the quality of that water?
Well, the same thing happened in Compton a few years ago, and the residents of Compton started seeing brown water coming out of their taps, and they said, "What's going on?" And the local water district said, "Well, it's safe, it's magnesium, you're okay. So it can be basically minerals." But they said, no, we'd rather have clear water if that's okay. And that's when the water district kind of said, well, you've been voting down our infrastructure expenses for the last 15 years. Now you get what you paid for. Needless to say, that water district was quickly absorbed by the larger metropolitan district, and I'm happy to say that the problem's largely handled, but we have an endemic problem that most people are just not aware of. Now, when you or I were growing up, and I have to say today's my birthday and I'm literally 10 years older than you, was that we had a big problem, that came to light recently, but when we were growing up, we drank the tap water. We didn't worry about it. Today, I don't think anybody does so with any kind of, they'll drink the tap water if they have to. you and I, if we have the funds, we install, under sink systems, and at the very least, one of those countertop water filters that are very good. But so many people can't do that, and frankly, they shouldn't have to. And I've gotten kind of passionate about it, because what I learned, I came from high tech into the water industry and expecting to find an industry ready to be transformed. It was not. Okay. What I did learn was that 90% of the demand on the cities for fresh water and water treatment is from industry and agriculture. Only 10% is the humans. Well, I think that's wrong. First of all, the system was built for humans, was not built for industry. And secondly, it's overwhelmed. There's not enough funds. The Biden administration allocated, $1.2 trillion for infrastructure, of which only $55 billion went to water, and we're falling behind by almost $100 billion every year. So we have a solution, but it is a dire situation.
The American Society of Civil Engineers gave the U.S. a C- overall for its drinking water systems. Is our current administration doing enough for water infrastructure? And I don't think they are, but what would you recommend that we do?
Well, clearly not. I mean, compare 55 billion to 1.2 trillion. And arguably, clean water is more important than rural bandwidth, for example, right? Which was a big deal in the infrastructure bill. But I wouldn't entirely blame the administration. I think it's a problem with all of us because, first of all, we don't love sewage. I mean, this is not, we think water is important, but sewage is like, not so much, right? But secondly,
no, we don't love sewage.
I'm just trying to be delicate because I'm in the water industry. But where are you going to put the sewage plants? I'm here in Pinellas County, Tampa Bay area. It's full of houses. There's no room. And who's going to want a sewage plant next to where they live? So budget, room, and the NIMBY problem means that there's not going to be a lot of building new facilities centrally. And so we got to do something else. We are fulfilling the definition of insanity right now.
Yeah, we saw in Flint, Michigan, exposure to lead can seriously harm a child's health, as you mentioned, including brain damage and to the nervous system and slowed growth and development and learning and behavior problems and hearing problems and speech problems. How can we fix this, and why are kids under 6 most at risk?
Well, I have to say, there's the saying, mad as a hatter, because hatters used to make hats with lead, and that's how they started looking kind of crazy. So it's all ages. Lead is a terrible problem, but I agree that the developmental stage is the worst. We've got to allocate massively more priority. And I have to say that that's where the Biden bill did allocate, that $55 billion, a great deal was allocated for lead remediation. So, again, I want to be fair to say, there is a lot of attention on that by the federal government. The states have awakened. The Flint example was a clarion call to okay, enough already. And I think that it's not just lead, it's arsenic, it's those forever chemicals we're hearing about, it's the Roundup. That farmers who use Roundup get elevated levels of brain cancers, right? Well, that's the high level exposure, but even the low level exposure is bad that we get every single day. So we need to think about a range of chemicals, and the key here is we've got to free up the municipalities to do their job with humans, with residents. Right now, they're overwhelmed serving the industry and agriculture because, that's what they're being thrown all this toxic waste from those industrial and agriculture users. If we somehow were to alleviate that, then the cities would have more money, more resources to take care of people. Do you know that in Ireland, water is free? Why isn't it free here? Because of the overload from industry.
Yeah, when I was growing up, we never had to be reminded to drink water. And when we did, we'd drink it out of the water faucet at school or the hose, Now, I told you when we were talking, I have a she shed in Southwest Florida. One of the big issues there is red tide. Can you talk about that?
Red tide.
Cheers, by the way.
I'm draining it rapidly. I'm going to have to get some more, but okay. Hopefully, you're going to keep getting supplied. And by the way, initially I thought a sea shed, like at the sea, but now I know it's a she shed. I've been educated.
She shed.
Anyway, red tide, the noxious algae, sometimes it's black, sometimes it's green. We see that a lot downstream from agriculture, because what we have is we have phosphates and nitrates being dumped into the rivers. Happens a lot, for example, in the Carolinas, coming out of the chicken farms. And algae is doing its job. It's eating up those nutrients. It's trying to clean things up. Unfortunately, in the process, it's taking all the oxygen out of the water and killing the fish. It's not good. We have to do a better job. You know, I summered twice in Italy when my son was growing up, and we were by this beautiful crater lake, and all these fields went down into the lake, and yet the lake was limpid and you could drink from it because the Italians were doing such a great job of cleaning that agricultural runoff. We've got to meet the same standard. So there is a solution, but it's called self-help by industry and agriculture, and I can get to that.
When I was growing up, I lived in Michigan, and I remember when Lake Erie caught fire. Do you remember that?
Absolutely. Oh my God.
And we found out that Canada was pouring its sewage into the Great Lakes. I mean, it's not just us, but it's other countries, and you know what's going on in our water system around the world. It's all meshing into our agriculture as well.
It's so bad that worldwide, only 20% of sewage is actually treated. 80% is dumped into the ground, into the rivers, into the ocean. That's a lot of sewage. Now, America, the ratio flips. It's more like 80% treated. But places like Bangladesh, I mean, I'm not blaming Bangladesh, but they're a poor country and they just don't have the infrastructure. And so virtually everything is dumped. India, same problem. Many countries, Mexico just south of us has a big problem, and they're well aware of it. They're trying hard to do something about it. But, you know, it's a catch-up process. And again, you have to look at how is India going to solve its problem with water? It's not going to solve it with giant, you know, trillion-dollar projects. Where's the money? Where's the time? Where's the space? They're going to have to do it in a very simple way. And that is through water independence, by promoting businesses and farms and eventually homes doing their own water treatment on site so that the central facilities are not so overburdened.
Are there any legal resources for those who have been affected and hurt by the lead poisoning? Where could they go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I suspect, NRDC is a great organization. They are really, proactive in the area. So, Environmental Working Group, EWG.org. I would go to one of the nonprofits like them to ask for help. Because these lawyers are passionate, right? And they often do it as part of their mission as working for a nonprofit. So I think that government is overwhelmed, doesn't know what to do. And again, it's not their fault, but they're just not equipped for it. I think that this is where the nonprofits are going to have to step in.
Yeah. Well, Riggs, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
It's such a pleasure, Shemane, and anytime I can help, this is a thing I'm passionate about. And, with this good coffee, we end up on a nice note.
There you go. Cheers.
You too.